started noticing his mood started changing. And everyone, after school, pretty much everybody that we knew or our friends knew, that you sitting out the house.
These college friends were concealing a dark secret about the chilling disappearance of a young girl.
You told me that Zeke got there about 7 o'clock, spent the evening and night at your house?
Roughly, yeah. That's what I said.
Kathy Cho, a 19-year-old enjoying her high school life with her friends. But the chilling truth is that between those friends, one was her killer. On that fateful night, Kathy left a message, "I'll be back soon," but she never returned. But the cops soon realized that among those friends, her boyfriend was actually the killer.
Hello, Kathy, about Chica Wow Wow.
Kathy was very popular on social media, Facebook, YouTube.
Yeah.
April 10th, 2010. 19-year-old Kathy Cho left her house for what seemed like an ordinary walk, taking only her cell phone. But that walk would mark the beginning of a chilling mystery. 2 hours passed and Kathy still hadn't returned. Her parents, Debbie and Henry Cho, known for being strict about her routine, felt their anxiety growing. They called her, desperate for an answer. Instead of picking up, Kathy sent a text message, "I'll be home soon." Those 4 words would haunt them forever. Kathy had never communicated with her parents through text before. They found it odd, almost out of character, but they clung to the hope that she'd walk through the door any minute. Minutes turned into hours. Kathy didn't come back that night. By morning, her phone was off and her parents, now panicked,
"The customer you're trying to reach is not available. Please call back."
filed a missing person report. Where was Kathy Cho? And why did that one text feel so wrong? Morning came and Kathy still hadn't shown up for school. Known for her wide circle of friends and her popularity, her absence set off alarm bells among her peers.
When I lived here, I knew all of my neighbors and we were friends. I would consider it a place where people have each other's backs. It's a good place to have a family.
At first glance, her disappearance seemed like she had run away.
Kathy's parents, Henry and Debbie Chow, were very upset because they had no idea what would have happened to her.
But as days turned into weeks, the case took a far more sinister turn. It was now a full-blown missing persons investigation.
Oh my God. Kathy loves selfies. Kathy always loved to do this pose all the time.
The detectives searching for clues turned their attention to Kathy's room. Sitting there untouched was her computer. As a teenager with an active online presence, Kathy's digital life could hold vital leads. But before they could even power it on, something far more unsettling surfaced. The focus of the investigation had shifted dramatically to Kathy's parents. Debbie and Henry Cho's behavior raised red flags. They were hesitant, uncooperative, and seemed to be holding back critical information. Detectives began to suspect that the Chos might be hiding dark secrets. Henry Cho made a strange offer to the police. He claimed he'd have Kathy's laptop examined by his own sources and share anything useful. This only deepened the detective's suspicions. Was he trying to conceal something? Sensing trouble, the investigators wasted no time. They brought both parents in for questioning.
I was very shocked that he wouldn't give us the computer. I mean, he wants us to find his daughter, but then he would not cooperate.
Henry agreed to take a lie detector test, but as the test began, his overwhelming emotions, tears, and frequent pauses disrupted the process. The test had to be stopped multiple times, leaving investigators with no clear answers.
Is it just his memories and emotion of his daughter missing, or is there something else going on?
With the lie detector failing to shed light, detectives turned to the family's community for insights. Conversations with neighbors revealed that Taiwanese immigrants were deeply private. They rarely interacted with others, a cultural trait that initially fueled suspicions but later seemed innocuous.
Kathy's parents, if they invite you in their house, that's the biggest honor that you can get.
As the investigation hit a wall, detectives began to fear no leads were left. Then, the unexpected happened.
I think the Chows wanted to protect their privacy, and in their experiences growing up, the police could not be trusted.
A visitor arrived at their doorstep, a twist no one saw coming. It was Henry Cho. This time, he came with evidence that could change everything: Kathy's computer. The very item he had initially withheld was now handed over, and with that, the Chos were eliminated as suspects. Their reluctance had been misinterpreted as guilt, but it was only fear and grief. Now, all hopes rested on Kathy's computer, and it didn't disappoint. Investigators didn't just find a lead, they found 8, each one a thread that could unravel the truth behind Kathy's disappearance. The case was far from over, but for the first time in weeks, the detectives had a trail to follow. Forensic analysts digging through her computer uncovered a hidden digital life, one that revealed she had been chatting with multiple men online, possibly looking for a partner.
When we got Kathy's computer and got the results, we found that she wasn't just on social media, but she was on numerous dating sites and meeting lots of men. She was in contact with 8 men around the time of her disappearance.
This discovery was a much-needed breakthrough.
Kathy was talking to a lot of guys on the internet. She was so excited about the prom, and she didn't want to go alone.
Investigators now had 8 names, 8 potential suspects to focus on. As they ran background checks, the detectives made an alarming find.
You're meeting someone online and you know nothing about them. You have no idea if this is a good person, if this is a violent person. You just don't know.
Some of these men had violent histories, including assault charges. This revelation only added urgency to the case. Could one of them have been involved in Kathy's disappearance? Adding to the puzzle, the investigators uncovered another crucial piece of evidence. Kathy's phone pinged for the last time at 9:48 p.m. on April 10th, the night she vanished. The signal placed her at Boulevard Park.
Some stranger that just picked her up, put her in the van. That's what was going through my head. Some crazy guy that grabbed her.
The question loomed large. Did Kathy plan to meet one of these men at the park, or had someone lured her there under false pretenses? Determined to follow this trail, the detective summoned all 8 men for questioning. Each was asked to come to the station to shed light on their connection with Kathy.
Maybe Kathy went on a walk knowing that one of these guys would be waiting for her to meet her somewhere, and one of these guys might have killed her. We wanted to find out how long they had known her, if they met Kathy in person or online. A couple of those guys had assault charges. We gave each one a polygraph.
While the interviews unfolded, search teams scoured Boulevard Park, hoping for any sign of Kathy.
We sent the tracking dogs out around the area where Kathy's phone was. There's a swampy area, a lot of it's overgrown, so we're relying on the dog scent to search the entire park.
The detectives refused to give up, pushing hard to piece together the events of that night. But as each interrogation wrapped up, the results were disheartening. No clear answers, no solid evidence. Once again, the case hit a wall.
Each of these guys passed no deception. I was thinking one of these guys was going to be our suspect. We had no place to go after this.
Kathy's last known location, Boulevard Park, offered no new clues. The men she'd been in contact with provided no leads, and the detectives were left grappling with haunting questions. Had Kathy run away after all, or was something far darker at play? For now, they were back to square one, but their resolve to uncover the truth about Kathy's fate burned brighter than ever. Months turned into a year, and it felt like Kathy's case was slipping into the shadows.
My mom drove me around to see if we saw her around the areas that she liked to hang out around. We went to South Center Mall. We went around to the parks, the areas that she liked to walk. We went to everywhere.
Search parties combed through areas like South Center Mall, retracing her usual walking route, but every effort led to dead ends. The police even set up a dedicated tip line, but every sighting turned out to be a heartbreaking case of mistaken identity.
It was disappointing when people said they saw Kathy. Your heart jumped like, yay, and then find out it was a no, and then you're way down below the floor.
As the one-year mark of Kathy's disappearance loomed, it seemed her case was teetering on the edge of going cold. But destiny had other plans. A fragile house of secrets was about to collapse, and the tremors pointed to someone unexpected, Kathy's ex-best friend, Jamie Marlowe. It started with a shocking detail. Jamie began showing up at college wearing shoes identical to Kathy's. They weren't new. They looked well worn, like they had been used for months. The sight sent chills through Kathy's friends. Were these just similar shoes, a creepy tribute, or Could they be Kathy's shoes? Questions spiraled. Was Jamie trying to imitate her missing friend, to claim her style, her identity? Or was this a sinister sign of something darker?
One day I had everybody coming up to me, just like, you wouldn't believe there's these shoes that look like Kathy's shoes. I'm like, where? Who?
Kathy's friends decided not to jump to conclusions, but they couldn't shake their unease. Then came another bombshell. The police uncovered that Jamie was dating none other than Ezekiel James Watkin, Kathy's ex-boyfriend, known as Zeke to his friends. This connection was too big to ignore. What did Jamie and Zeke know about Kathy? And why were they tied together so closely now?
First person you always look at is the boyfriend. And Zeke was the only boyfriend she had ever had. They dated for a few months, a couple years prior. He was 2 years older than Kathy, but they met at school. And they were both part of a group of kids that hung around together.
The case had just taken a chilling turn, one that no one saw coming. Zeke, Kathy's ex-boyfriend, was the last person anyone would expect to be linked to her disappearance. Their relationship had ended on bitter terms, but there was something far more compelling that made the police zero in on him. On the very day Kathy vanished, Zeke had been texting her multiple times. This was the breakthrough the detectives needed. They brought Zeke in for questioning, confident they were about to crack the case wide open. Zeke walked in, seemingly calm, insisting that their suspicions were all wrong. He claimed he and Kathy were on good terms now, despite their rocky past. Then the detectives asked him about his whereabouts the night Kathy disappeared. Zeke told them he had been with his friend Jon Carpenter gaming the night away. The detectives pressed him further, asking about their text conversations from that day.
Zeke seemed like he cared for Kathy and that he was concerned that she was missing. He told us that he thought she had a new boyfriend, and Zeke wanted to help us find out who this new boyfriend was, because he figured that's probably where she was.
Zeke claimed Kathy had wanted to hang out with him, but he had turned her down. Everything was starting to feel off, and the detectives needed to get to the truth. They turned to Zeke's alibi, hoping it would either clear him or trap him for good. Jon Carpenter wasn't just Zeke's alibi, he was also one of Kathy's friends. So when he walked into the station, the detectives couldn't help but have a few other questions in mind. But Jon's story was clear. He told them he hadn't seen Kathy on the day she disappeared.
Jon said it was true that Zeke was at his house all evening and all night and had never left.
At first, it seemed straightforward, but something was nagging at the back of the detectives' minds. Jon and Zeke were close. What if Jon was covering for his friend? To rule out any chance of deception, the detectives decided to put Zeke to the test. They administered a polygraph, hoping it would reveal the truth.
I wanted to give Zeke a polygraph to eliminate him so we could get on with other suspects.
And Zeke passed with flying colors. No lies, no hesitation. He nailed the polygraph test with ease. With Zeke cleared, the investigators found themselves facing a dead end. They were out of leads, and the case was slipping further into the shadows. But when it seemed like the case had reached its final dead end, the strangest twist emerged. An anonymous call came into the Renton Police Department. An unknown girl, unwilling to reveal her identity, claimed to have vital information about Kathy Cho's disappearance. Her cryptic advice? If the police wanted to know the truth, they should start looking into Gio. Giovanni Candelario, or Gio, had been flying under the radar, a name the investigators hadn't even considered until now. But when the police reached out, Gio didn't hesitate. He walked into the station with the confidence of someone who had been waiting for this moment.
How did you know Kathy Cho?
I met her through a friend of ours, Eden, doing girls from school, stuff like that. I think she had a class with me. With them, it was like, oh yeah, come hang out with us, let's play video games, And everyone, after school, pretty much everybody that we knew, our friends group, used to hang out in the house,
Gio wasn't just a random friend, he was Jon's roommate. And when he spoke, it quickly became clear that he had a bone to pick with Zeke. The tension between Zeke and Gio had been brewing for some time. Gio was ready to expose a deep secret, one that would unravel everything. Zeke and Kathy had once been inseparable. They were each other's first loves, but their relationship had ended in flames. The breakup was ugly, leaving Kathy emotionally shattered. But Zeke's next move was the real shocker. He moved on. by dating Jamie Marlowe, Kathy's best friend. This betrayal hit Kathy hard. The emotional impact was devastating, and the fallout was felt throughout their circle of friends. Jamie, once beloved, became an outcast. Invitations stopped, whispers followed her, and soon it was as if she had disappeared from their lives entirely. But the bombshell was still coming. Gio had more to reveal. According to Gio, Zeke hadn't been with him and Jon the entire night Kathy disappeared. Zeke had joined them only after midnight, and when he did, his clothes were covered in mud. The police couldn't ignore this. If Zeke had met Kathy at Boulevard Park, an area known for being swampy, it made perfect sense that he would have ended up covered in mud. The implications were staggering. If Gio was right, Zeke's alibi was a lie. He hadn't been playing video games with Jon that night. The muddy clothes and Gio's story made the detectives question everything. But when Gio asked Zeke about the mud, Zeke's explanation was anything but convincing. He claimed he'd fallen off his motorcycle, but it didn't sit right with Gio. The more he thought about it, the more his suspicions grew.
I was wondering why you didn't give us a call and tell us about this about a year ago.
To be honest, I was not to expect. I was, it started hitting me way after things of him. Like, I started noticing his mood started changing with things.
Zeke had changed in the past year, becoming volatile, snapping at friends, even stealing from them.
He became a us. He started becoming a real. And we were like, dude, why are you being like this? Like, why are you? His attitude dramatically changed, and we weren't expecting this, Like, it shocked me.
It all came to a head when Gio confronted Zeke. He warned him not to play the fool, that he knew exactly what had happened on the night of Kathy's disappearance. But to Gio's shock, Zeke didn't deny it. He didn't try to explain himself or cover it up. This left Gio bitter, and it was the final push needed for him to speak up. His anonymous tip and his explosive revelations brought the investigation back to life. The detectives knew they needed to revisit the old suspects, even though they had already been questioned. But the burning question in their minds remained. Could Gio really be telling the truth, or was he simply trying to settle a score with Zeke?
Gio was coming forward at this time because he and Zeke were not getting along. So to get back at Zeke, he came to the police.
The case once again revolved around the same group of friends. One testimony had cleared Zeke. Now another had dragged him back into the spotlight. To get to the bottom of it all, Jon Carpenter, Zeke's only alibi, was called back in for questioning.
Okay, let's go back now to when Kathy went missing. Do you remember that night? You told me that Zeke got there about 7 o'clock, spent the evening and night at your house?
Roughly, yeah. That's what I assumed.
What Jon said next would leave the detectives stunned.
It was probably a dream, though, but because I have a lot of realistic dreams, so it could have been a dream, it could have not been.
His statements didn't directly contradict Zeke's alibi, but they didn't quite add up either. Was Jon trying to cover up the truth? Had he been protecting his friend all along?
Red lights are going off. Oh yeah, he wasn't there the whole night. What he originally told us the year before could have just been a dream.
Ironically, Jon's answers had unknowingly set the stage for a new investigation. The detectives were now on the cusp of uncovering a shocking truth that would completely shatter everything they thought they knew about Kathy's disappearance. At long last, Zeke was called in for questioning. By now, the police had gathered a solid piece of evidence that pointed straight to him. They began the interrogation casually, but Zeke's indifference was palpable. He repeated everything he had said a year ago as if the entire case was beneath him.
I got to clear up questions that I had when I read through the case. That's one of the reasons talking to everybody again.
Kathy texted me saying that she's going to be hanging out with whoever.
But as minutes ticked by, the pressure mounted. The evidence was undeniable, and Zeke's calm facade began to crack.
Kathy's phone records from that night, and then she went missing on the 18th. All those recordings from the cell towers, plotting points, they all show you guys right together, right in the same spot between like your house and your buddy's apartment, that area, that really woody, swampy area.
I could see him deflate. It was like somebody had punched him in the face. and I knew that my suspect was sitting in front of me.
Slowly, he started letting the truth slip, truths he had kept hidden for over a year.
When I asked you, did you see her that night? You said no. And is that really the truth?
Yeah, well, I've probably seen her. Yes.
You saw her that night.
Zeke confessed that he had called Kathy that night because he was angry. Kathy had been pressuring Jamie not to date him, and the pressure from Kathy and her friends had felt like a threat to Jamie. He wanted to confront Kathy about it at Boulevard Park, but their conversation quickly spiraled into a heated argument.
Were you getting mad or heated or anything at all?
Of course, I heard pounds really fast.
Yeah.
And I did have a little anger issue, but
okay.
It never strike or anything.
Zeke, known for keeping his temper in check, admitted that this time he had gone in armed.
I know I carried a knife here and there, just for texting around on the roads.
When Kathy saw the knife, she panicked, and things escalated even further.
Zeke admitted that they started fighting over the knife, at which point Kathy gained control of the knife and cut him on the lip.
Zeke still had a visible scar 15 months later in the corner of his mouth.
Then came the moment everyone had been dreading, the confession that would turn everything upside down.
1 second, the knife cuts me, next, pretty much like in her throat. But I guess, lastly, jabbing in her throat.
Was she dead? I mean, did you think she was dead? Yeah.
Zeke admitted to a violent scuffle, followed by a hasty burial that night. But the biggest shock was yet to come. There was no way he could have acted alone. The detectives had believed Jon Carpenter was merely an alibi, but they were wrong. Jon wasn't just a friend, he was Zeke's accomplice.
Did you ask him for a shovel? You did?
Yeah, dig the hole in there.
How far down did you guys dig? So that he helped you put her in a grave?
The interrogation wasn't over yet. After months of a missing person case, detectives often fear that the person may never return. By this point, they knew Kathy was gone for good, but the burning question was, how had she died? Zeke claimed her death was a tragic accident during a violent scuffle, but the investigators were starting to believe it wasn't an accident at all. It was premeditated murder. To fill in the missing pieces, they brought in the accomplice Jon Carpenter. This time, the cards were already on the table, and Jon had no choice but to give the police what they needed.
Zeke has told me, made admissions to me today, that he was responsible for Kathy's death. He said that you helped him dig the grave site.
So, I did. I don't know. And my mind just went blank, and I just looked at him like, he's a friend. And I just can't really turn him down.
Jon, now fully aware of the situation, began to open up. He provided the investigators with all the details they needed to tighten the case against Zeke and give Kathy's family the closure they desperately sought. On July 8, 2011, Jon led the police to Boulevard Park, where Kathy's body had been buried, along with the dark secret Zeke and Jon had kept for over a year. But what they uncovered wasn't just a body, it was murder, not an accident as Zeke had claimed. And now, the investigators had the body and the proof they needed to confirm it.
There were multiple stab wounds on her body. Her throat had been slit from ear to ear. So we were able to ultimately show that this wasn't an accident at all. It was murder in the first degree.
Kathy's body was found in a shallow grave. To cram her body into the small space, Zeke had jumped on it repeatedly, breaking her legs in the process. But that gruesome act was just the beginning. Zeke then removed Kathy's shoes and later gave them to his new girlfriend, Jamie Marlowe. The Cho family, Henry and Debbie, were finally notified that their daughter's body had been found.
I asked Kathy's parents if they would like to go out to the site where we recovered their daughter's remains. We went out to the scene, so that they could lay flowers down in honor of their daughter.
However, this high school tragedy had one final confession to come, one last piece of the puzzle from Ezekiel that would change everything.
Did you get her to come out there because you were going to stab her?
Yes. How long had you been thinking about doing this before you called her that day?
A couple of days.
On December 4th, 2004, Ezekiel was sentenced to 21 years in prison for his role in Kathy's death. However, Jon's story took a different turn. It was his cooperation with the police that had cracked the case wide open. His testimony provided critical evidence, and despite his involvement in burying Kathy's body, Jon received immunity and was placed under protective custody. Meanwhile, Jamie Marlowe took the stand and revealed a chilling truth. She had worn Kathy's shoes, despite their unsettling resemblance to her missing friends. Fear of the truth, and of Zeke, had kept her silent for so long. Whatever had happened to Kathy, Jamie was determined not to let it happen to her. The truth only surfaced when the bonds of young friendship shattered. Who was the anonymous caller in the friend circle who alerted the police and mentioned Gio's name, sparking the case back to life? Was it Jamie Marlowe pressured into a relationship with Zeke? Or was there someone else in Kathy's circle more involved than we ever suspected? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. In this case, Zeke remained both the primary and final suspect. Despite passing the polygraph test, he was hiding the darkest secrets in this high school homicide. Does this kind of situation happen more often than we think? Is that why polygraph results aren't admissible in court? If you found today's video compelling, please consider subscribing, hitting the like button, and sharing it with your friends. And if you have any crime stories you'd like us to cover, leave us a message in the comments below.